leading KF Aerospace, a significant player in the Canadian aerospace industry, particularly in maintenance, repair, and overall sector, and many more. I have in studio Tracy Medvey, CEO of KF Aerospace. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you.
You have an incredible career in aviation, from law school to leading KF Aerospace. Can you tell me what led you to take on leadership in this industry, in the aerospace industry?
Um, it's not probably a typical story, and I wish I could give myself credit for having planned this all out, but none of it was planned. Not one bit of it. I went to law school, graduated in 1981, and a lot of people won't remember that, but it was a really hard time. It was a huge inflationary time. I settled my student loan at 18% interest, and had to find an articling job, and there were no articling jobs in southern Canada, so I went to Yellowknife and did my articles there. And then I came south again to Saskatoon and articled there, and I was making $700 a month or something. And then I went and ultimately ended up working as in-house counsel for the Saskatchewan Housing Corporation in Regina. And I didn't find it all that interesting, to be really honest, and I didn't really love living in Regina so much. And I was walking to work one day pondering all these things, and a grasshopper came up and hit me right in my cheek, and I thought, I can't stay here and do this anymore. So I got on the phone that day and called a guy who was a friend of my dad's from Prince Albert, where I'd grown up, who owned a little air service in Saskatoon named Norcan Air. Albert Ethier was his name, and I just phoned him and said, Albert, look, I don't know anything about aviation, obviously, but I need you to give me a job because I can't stay here, and I can't practice law for a living. So he said, okay. And I'm pretty sure by the time I actually moved and got there and showed up for work the first day, he was looking at me like he'd forgotten that he'd hired me, but I said it wasn't going to go away. So he gave me an office to work out of, and it just went from there. I never really practiced law throughout my aviation career. I didn't really have to do that. There was always way more interesting things to do. And you can always find really good lawyers to help you out when you need it. So it just went from there. He sold Norcan Air to Time Air, and then Time Air was a part of the big merger that of the Canadian Airlines days. You know, this is back in the 90s, and I did that for a number of years, and then a friend, Carmen Loberg, and I started an aviation management consulting company in Calgary, and we were at that for probably about 15 years, and then Canadian North Airlines was one of our clients. They needed someone to be in the role of president, so I applied for the job. It's kind of the first job I'd applied for a long time, like decades. Got that job, and then I was approached by Barry Lapointe, the founder of KF. He asked if I would come here and run at that time Kelowna Flightcraft, it was called. Mm-hmm. So I agreed to do that. That was in May of 2013. So I came here, and then I changed the name to KF Aerospace, which he always said, hire a girl and they'll come in and change the colors and change the name. Like, that's what they do. So I did both of those things. He was right. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
So Tracy, 2013, I can't tell you when, but I want to say maybe 2018, 2019. I remember hearing this, I think, incredibly challenging goal of KF Aero wanting to have 25% women, females in employment at KF Aero by the end of 2025.
Right.
How are you doing with the goal?
We are company-wide at 24%, I think. So that's pretty good, but I'd like to see more women in our trades. Like, that's company-wide, and I think it's commendable, but we just the industry needs more women to enter the trades, like aircraft maintenance engineering and aerospace engineers. pilots and flight crew. We need all those things, and so
that leads me to the event that you will be hosting tomorrow,
right.
At KF Center for Excellence, and you have a panel of 6 women.
That's correct.
How did you pick the women?
They represent a really diverse number of jobs. Our director of HR, we've got an aircraft maintenance engineer, we've got a pilot that's involved with our military pilot training program. We've got another pilot, and now I'm thinking, and then there's myself. So we've got it was a broad
Very
group.
diverse.
Oh, and our supply chain manager. I'm sorry, I
Okay.
forgot about Jillian.
Okay.
Supply chain. So all really important pieces of the puzzle, and I thought it was a good chance for people to recognize that there's. I think a lot of times when people think about a career in aviation, and maybe women thinking about a career in aviation, so I have to be a pilot, and that's or a flight attendant, I suppose. But there's so many other jobs in the industry, and that was part of what I wanted to highlight, and then also to be able to give people that had questions about it an opportunity to speak to our HR director who knows a lot of the requirements to enter into those kinds of roles. So it seemed a good cross section.
And I imagine the main goal of this panel is to educate and let people know that there are, especially women, know that there's numerous opportunities in aviation. But is it to also educate around maybe some of the challenges or stereotypes that are still present in aviation?
Certainly, anyone would be open to ask questions about that of any of the panels, like what kinds of challenges did you face? I like to think that the challenges are, I don't like to underscore them somehow. There's challenges in every industry, every job. There's always going to be challenges. I guess they're sometimes a little bit different. I think our industry's come a very, very long way since I started. That was 40 years ago. It's changed a lot. But even still, when I think back over the 40 years of my own career, it was tough sometimes. And I was young. I was in my late 20s when I started. And having a law degree helped. Like, at least people understood we have some aptitude to learn. And there was a few people that tried to get in the way, I suppose, or weren't as accommodating as you would hope. But I think you just have to put one foot in front of the other. And I don't want people to think that the industry is more challenging in some ways. I just think that there's all these opportunities, and I don't think it's any more challenging in aviation than it would be in other areas.
Than any other. So when the attendees are at this event tomorrow evening, I think especially young women, what will they take away from hearing the 6 women speaking? You've alluded to sort of their stories and their journey in their particular career.
Yes. So the idea is to have it's more like a fireside conversation to talk a little bit about how each of them came to be at KF, how they may have gone about choosing the career path that they did. Hopefully a lot of them were more well thought out than my own. And also to ask them for their observations on what they might recommend for somebody that's thinking about the industry, what challenges they think they could face, and here's hopefully what KF is doing to overcome those things. So it's an employer that recognizes that there might be difficult areas to work in initially, and what are we as a company doing about those kinds of issues. So I hope it's just like very open and frank, and that anyone that's thinking about it, who's there tomorrow night, or knows somebody that might be thinking about it, will go, it's worth investigating the next step, if nothing else.
And I was wondering that when I was reading about the event, it's not that it's specifically ideally created to, and then insert example. So it's not a job opportunity or career opportunity panel. This could be parents, grandparents, uh, brothers, women that are
Yep.
thinking of, so especially anyone considering trades and possibly aviation as an industry.
The trades, for sure. That would be one area. Obviously, aircraft maintenance engineering program. They're offered locally. They're great programs. But also, no enterprise exists without that very critically important administrative base. So if you're not interested in a hands-on trade, working on an airplane or working in our shops, we have shops where we manufacture aircraft parts and do wiring bundles and painting. We paint aircraft, we do all those things. But we need HR, payroll, IT, hangar support people. There's all kinds of other administrative support things that are there as well, and we need those kinds of jobs filled as well. So.
And it's incredible. I've had the opportunity of going to KF Aero. Grant Stevens was kind enough to give me a tour of an aircraft that was being, am I using the right language, dismantled so that it could be put back together.
Yes, so that's one of the jobs that one of the areas that we work in our MRO is what's called heavy aircraft maintenance. So you're really doing a deep dive into an airplane to inspect it for safety, and these are checks that have to happen within regulated periods of time. So we do those. We also do conversion of aircraft, like we'll take a passenger aircraft, cut a gigantic hole in it, put a door in it, and turn it into a cargo plane. So we do that kind of work as well. So the variety of work that we do is also quite diverse and interesting too, for people that want something a little bit different.
And I think, Tracy, it's maybe sometimes taken for granted. I really do think it is in this community that we actually have a KF Aero in little old Kelowna, and the magnitude of the contracts and the significance of the market share that KF has in aerospace is impressive, and it's significant. And I encourage anyone within the city to come out and hear these beautiful stories from these panelists that you've chosen. KF Aero is doing some groundbreaking work, and this panel ties into that legacy. I'm referring to not only the KF Aerospace legacy, but the fact that you've been picked or inducted into the Aviation Hall of Fame.
That's true. It's quite an honor to be considered for induction into that space. It's sort of still a little bit unreal. Makes me feel a little old, but I have been at this for 40 years. But yeah, it's a huge honor, because when you think about the other people that are there, they've all made very significant contributions to aviation in Canada. Canada can't be what Canada is without aviation. It's just too large a geographic space with too small a population not to be completely dependent for our economic well-being on aviation and aerospace. So to be considered for that is, as I say, it's a real honor, very humbling. And I'm just sorry my dad's not here to see it, because he would be losing his mind over it. He never was in aviation himself, other than he was a private pilot. And if he could spend 1 minute at an airport somewhere, that's what he would do. So, and he used to take us up when we were kids and fly us around Prince Albert in this little Cessna 150. And it sort of started from there, I guess. So it's just too bad he's not here. He would have been really happy too. So
I can't even imagine how proud he would have been. Are there, so just going back to maybe some of the stigmatism. So aviation, again, has historically been male dominated. You're trying to break down those barriers. You're at 24% of your 2025 goal. What barriers do you think still exist for women entering the industry? And maybe even how can events like this open the conversation or try and help break down those barriers?
I guess if you ask this question, the same question of all the panelists, you may get a different answer because they'll be looking at it from their own lens. From my perspective, I think now a lot of the barrier, if you will, is hopefully more about just a lot of people not being aware that there's so many different choices you could have in entering into a program to become involved in aerospace in some way. And the formats for being able to do that are changing also. For example, my niece just signed on to be an aircraft maintenance engineer, but she's got now through a new program that's offered. It's across Canada. Anybody can do it. Basically, you can do the first part of your training online. Okay. So she's continuing to work. She can live where she's living currently. So for a lot of women, I think that being able to go to school in that context is easier if they have young families, easier to manage their time, that kind of thing. So I'm really hopeful that as that program becomes more well known and we tell more and more people about it, having access will generate the idea, this, it might be something they were thinking of doing, but how do I take time away from my family or take time off work to go to school for this time? And so I think there's a lot about that's improved.
Exciting.
That's very exciting. And as I've said, I think just the awareness that aviation isn't just about flying an airplane, because for some people that might not be interesting, but actually fixing an airplane might be interesting, or making parts for an airplane might be interesting, or any of the other types of jobs within that space could be interesting. And I think we just need to let people know that those options are there.
And Tracy, I think it's so important. I think of even my middle daughter had no intention of becoming a nurse, but as she's in shared accommodations and she's in general education at university, sort of peeking over the fence and seeing the assignments and seeing, so information is imperative to bring possibilities forward. And again, I think a panel like this may actually change the trajectory of a woman within our region, or that knows someone that comes to this event, because that sharing of those programs, or the possibilities of the vast amount of positions in aviation, opens the idea or the door.
And I think also, just to layer on that, so you've got all those opportunities, then you've got those opportunities in Kelowna. So if you're already here, we employ over 800 people just in Kelowna. We're about 1,150 people across the country. And so we also have a big facility, maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility in Hamilton. Our military pilot training program is in Portage Prairies. We've got a base in Vancouver. But so there's all those opportunities. But if you're here, you can go to school to be an aircraft maintenance engineer here and go across the road, basically. And here you've got a very substantial, sizable company where you can find employment. And I guess the other sort of plug for KF is, that company was founded in 1970. And it's still here, and that's almost unheard of in our industry. To have the same owner in the same town who is still running this company, or still has this company going, and so that should give some comfort that the company's here for the long haul, and can provide some good security. if you do decide you want to enter into a job in the industry, it's right there in our backyard.
It's incredible. You have been a vocal advocate for women in aviation, and as you said earlier, it can be a pilot, it could be an engineer, it could be an executive, it could be maintenance. Is there a single piece of advice or words of wisdom that you would share with a young woman that is considering this field or this sector?
I would say, I can't do it in a single word, but I would say that if you're thinking about it and you might be scared off because you hear it's a male dominated industry, I wouldn't be scared by that. I think that the the one thing that can get you through whatever you're facing is the person that you look at in the mirror every morning when you're brushing your hair and getting ready to go out the door to do whatever it is you're doing. That person can get you through whatever it is you need. And aviation doesn't need to be a scary place. You know, I know KF is working hard to make sure that it's a place for everybody. I think our industry has changed over this 40 years that I've seen it to make it a place for everybody. And if you're interested, come on in. It's like, take the first step, and you never know where you're going to end up. Could be really interesting.
And I think that's perfect when you were speaking early about the fact that we have KF Aero right here in this region, but we also have Okanagan College and the aviation or the maintenance training program right here.
We also have an aerospace engineering program at UBCO as well. So we've got people within the company that started at UBCO in a program and are now have transitioned to take their degree in aerospace engineering. And we have co-op programs. So in the summer, you could come and work as a co-op student and go back. You could go back and finish off your final year of aerospace engineering, knowing that you've got a job to come to, like the day you get out of school, if you want. So there are all those opportunities as well, as you point out. It's a pretty good little community of education, and then an opportunity to use your education and still be able to stay in the valley if you want.
And Tracy, that isn't afforded to all sectors and all industries.
No.
There's so many that bring out enormous amounts of grads, and you don't necessarily get to practice in the industry that you've been educated in. So that I don't want to say guarantee, but that really strong assurance that there's a job waiting for you is
should be an
rare.
attraction. Yeah,
Absolutely. So the aviation industry is evolving rapidly with new technologies. There's amazing new technologies coming, and sustainable goals. So how is this a fair question? Do you see women contributing to those changes differently, or just people within the industry contributing to those changes? And is that maybe something or a topic that one of the panelists might speak on?
We don't have a panelist that's there to talk specifically about innovation, and I don't think it's specific to women or not. It's an industry, really an industry-driven thing. Of course, our industry is heavily regulated for safety reasons, so any idea that's coming on the table as this is the way of the future, it's going to go through a huge amount of scrutiny, and it's going to take a lot of people contributing to the idea and piloting the various aspects of it to bring it to fruition. So I don't think that's specifically anyone's job. That's going to take an army of people to make those things happen. So
It's exciting. It is absolutely exciting. So the event is tomorrow evening. The tickets are, I believe they're $10 a piece. It will be held at KF Center of Excellence.
that's correct.
Is there anything else that you would like to mention, or a personal invitation that you'd like to share that would encourage people to grab their ticket and come out and attend an incredible evening?
Well, the KF Center for Excellence itself is worth the trip out
It's
there
beautiful.
on La Pointe Way. It's a beautiful, beautiful building, built entirely from wood, BC lumber.
Absolutely.
There are some innovations in that building itself that are just worthy of having a look. If anybody's got young children and they are wondering what to do with them over the summer, it's one of the only places I think you could take them where you don't have to be going, don't touch that and don't touch that over there. It's meant to be interactive and interesting for young kids and old kids and everybody that loves anything to do with airplanes. So it's worth the trip just for that. I hope that they find the stories of the women that are on the panel interesting. They're taking their time to come and talk about that. We do have an aerospace engineer on the panel too. I know I forgot to mention that. My bad. And there'll be it's an informal affair, really. A bit of introductory remarks, then a conversation and some networking where you'd be able to have one-on-one discussions with any of the panelists or ask questions in the fireside forum. So I think it should be a comfortable thing for most people to come and see. And if you think as a parent or a grandparent that you might have a child that could be interested, or you're looking for ideas, that come see what it's all about. And there'll be opportunities for, after having access to engage with KF and just ask more questions and get more information about what it would take to, what that journey might look like, and how do you take the first step.
And this is a beautiful springboard or a nod honoring International Women's Day that is coming up. So wonderful that you put the panel together. I thank you so much for coming into studio and sharing with us a bit of your journey and the panelists, and I look forward to attending.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tracy.